Move speed.
His body's just lying there, right? Right? Yes. Don't. Bitch!
Hello everyone and welcome. Thank you Tom Carty for the intro. Links to his awesome music in the description below. But today we're here to talk about the second most popular reason for playing Dark and Darker in a casual poll taken amongst my comrades. The first answer was murdering other players. The second answer was loot. So the purpose of this video today is to talk a little bit about how to loot, how you might be doing it wrong, things to avoid, and things to look for when you're trying to get the best treasure out of the dungeon. Before we get started though, usual YouTube stuff. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. It helps me a ton. If you don't, then see ya, and good fortune to you in your raids to come. But let's hop in with a bit of a warning. We are going to use math to make decisions about loot. So if you're triggered by math in any way, shape, or form, just kind of white-knuckle your way through this. We're going to talk about how it's at the heart of our decision-making process about what loot to take.
Sank on me.
But before we get too deep into that, let's go ahead and talk about the fundamentals of looting. So I have loaded into the crypts here. I'm on Naked Timmy Warrior, where I'm going to illustrate some of the concepts behind how you loot. Now, to interact with almost anything in Dark and Darker, you're going to hit F. I'm going to kill this mummy. I'm going to walk up to it and click F to be able to loot it. Lo and behold, he has a sapphire, a white quality sapphire. I left click it out of the mob's inventory to move it into mine. Then I shift right clicked it to drop it on the ground. I've also drug a torch out of my inventory and dropped it on the ground. Notice how it did not activate the pressure plate. I've thrown a torch onto the pressure plate. Notice how it did activate. Once again, I'm hitting F to loot this chest. You'll notice this takes some time, right? But it's probably got good stuff in it, and lo and behold, it does. I right-click this mace to equip the item into my inventory, and then I left-click the crystal sword to bring it into my inventory, and then shift right-clicked it to drop it on the ground, because I do not want that. But theoretically, I could have somebody else in my party, and dropping it on the ground near the chest where I found it is a lot more convenient for rapid looting. For example, the cleric has a very slow manipulation speed. It takes him a while to get into a box, even after it's been looted. So dropping it on the ground is a kinder way for clerics to pick up loot that they may be interested in. Just illustrating that as an example. Okay, the second mummy goes down. Let's see what he's got. He also has a gem, a white quality diamond, which I have looted from his inventory and put into mine by left-clicking it. I know these are very simple fundamentals, everybody, but I do want to cover them in case you're very new to the game and you don't understand how some of this works. I've smashed a pot. Pots contain sellable items, oftentimes very good ones, so smash them when you see them. This one contained a green quality bangle. What we need to discuss here is the inventory management system. Dark and Darker uses a grid-based inventory system, which is to say that you have a certain number of squares, and items take up a certain number of squares, and so far I have only looted items that have a single square worth of capacity taken, with the exception of the mace that I just picked up. The mace actually takes up 3 inventory slots, but that's not really relevant because I equipped it right away. It's in my hand, and therefore it's not really counting against my capacity from like a squares perspective. Now I just picked up a stack of bolts. Those, you'll notice, will take up 2 squares in my inventory, which leads us to kind of the first equation that we need to contemplate today from a math perspective. When evaluating the sale of any item, the value of any item, you have to figure out what it sells for divided by the number of slots it occupies. Let's assume for the sake of argument that this green mace that I picked up is worth 50 gold to another player. Now when I sell it to another player, I've also got an auction house fee to consider. So I need to say, let's say it sells for 50, that's actually 35 to me divided by number of slots, in this case 3. That mace is going to net me no more than 10, 11 gold per slot at the end of the day. And that is kind of the foundation for all of the math that we'll be using for this discussion. So far we've learned how to loot, and then we have a formula by which we derive value. So we should know what to loot. The question then becomes, what should I pick up versus what should I drop, And let's go ahead and jump into that right now. On the right here, you'll see I've included a table from the Dark and Darker wiki. This is available in the link in the description below. But this will essentially show you here on the left, you've got at the top a list of gems, and on the right you have ascending rarity going from gray all the way to epic, showing how each of those sale items scale. Generally speaking, a great rule of thumb is that gems are worth one quality level higher value than other sellables, right? So a white gem is worth the same as a green bauble. And we just saw that as I sold a white gem to the vendor, and I sold a green bauble, and they were worth essentially the same. So my first tip here that I'm rendering is that pick up gems over other sellable loot at every opportunity, because per slot they're going to be worth more. Setting that aside for a second, what should we loot? So we already know gems are good when we're talking about cash, but often we are trying to earn cash to, you know, buy gear. So let's talk about upgrades. When you find a direct upgrade to your kit for your character, you should always take it and equip it. Then you should evaluate the value of the thing you just took off. If it's a gray starter piece, obviously it's junk, it goes on the ground. But if that second piece that you just replaced is still of value to you, then you need to contemplate taking it out and banking it as part of another set, a backup set, a budget set, whatever you're working on right now in your gearing strategy. The question then becomes, is that slot efficient from a value perspective? So if I just replaced gloves, let's say I had some green gloves, but I found a pair of blue gloves, and I'm going to use those immediately because they're an upgrade for me. We're talking about a 4-slot piece of gear. All right, I picked up a particularly well-rolled blue. It's a 4-slot item. I equip it right away. Now I've got my old green gloves in my inventory. I look at those gloves and I say, those are worth 50 gold to a player, minus the 15 gold piece trade fee, using the equation we learned earlier. I now know that essentially the green gloves I'm now carting around in my inventory are worth about 7.5, 8 gold per inventory slot. Are those worth taking out? It depends on what you have. Like, if you have nothing in your inventory, then obviously anything in your inventory is of value. But that being said, I could have a lot of treasure in my inventory that is a lot more valuable to me than the 4 slots those green gloves that I'm retiring from this set are worth. Now I've brought up here onto the screen an extended table of multi-slot sellable items, once again from the Dark and Darker wiki, link in the description below. But essentially we're looking at the same kind of striation that we had in the previous table, where we're seeing, you know, a multi-slot item like a goblet. It takes up 2 inventory slots, and its value ascending from left to right from gray cracked all the ways to epic. So a gray cracked goblet is only worth 5 gold. That's 2.5 gold per inventory slot. And then we've got the epic one, which is going to be worth, you know, 45 gold or 22.5 gold per inventory slot. Going back to the fundamentals of gold stacking to 10 natively, you know, it is less valuable to have a cracked goblet in your inventory than a stack of gold by a wide margin. So, let's talk about gold purses. They're available from the Treasurer NPC in the lobby. You can purchase those for 5 gold each. And essentially, by bringing one of them into a raid, you are essentially, for risking 5 gold, renting 4 extra inventory slots per bag. Because they change the gold stack rate from 10 to 50. My second tip for you guys is always bring a gold purse into the dungeon with you. You're risking very little for considerably more opportunity on the upside. Right? So this allows gold to automatically sort into the bag, and it will go from stacking to a total of 10 to stacking for a total of 50, which fundamentally changes kind of our minimum expectation on gold per slot. So the other thing that kind of breaks the rules with regard to value in the grid management system is the seasonal goodies. And right now, at the time of this recording, we're still in the Halloween season, so candy corn is dropping. Candy corn is selling to players right now for right around 10 gold a piece, and it stacks to 10. So the value of 1 stack of candy corn is right around 100 gold before trade fees. Always worth taking. Look for seasonal goodies. I imagine Halloween will be ending soon, but Christmas is right around the corner. I expect they will reintroduce candy canes as the new seasonal goodie. And then when we get around to Valentine's Day, they have heart-shaped candies. Regardless, they're going to be seasonal goodies. Those are going to swing way above their weight class in terms of value per slot. So continue to pick those up. Now, the kind of last form of looting that you'll be doing is when you'll see a particularly well-rolled item in the dungeon. You can't use it, or you're not interested in it, but you know it will sell on the auction house. So you're picking up loot kind of on consignment. You're on spec going to sell this or attempt to sell it to another player in the trading post. Now, to be able to get really good at this, you really kind of need to understand the meta, what people are playing, and what builds those particular meta classes are taking to know if an item is particularly good. You'll develop this knowledge and context over time, but right now, here are a few tips that I think will help with the meta as it stands right now. Riveted gloves of all colors stack strength. They're particularly valuable to multiple classes, and I'd recommend always picking up and attempting to sell riveted gloves. The fighter helm that rolls strength on it is really good for fighters, right? Any Lightfoot boots with additional movement speed are going to sell really well to a myriad of classes, but particularly rogues. And all of those so far have been examples of 4-slot items, right? But a well-rolled pair of riveted gloves that are blue can easily sell for 200 gold pieces, or, you know, before trading fees, 50 gold per inventory slot. You know, rapiers, it's hard to find a rapier that you cannot sell for 50 gold, even if it's got shit rolls and dead stats. Rogues are thirsty for the rapier, and so, you know, for 3 inventory slots for 50 gold, even at, you know, with the trading fee, you're still looking at, you know, 11 gold per inventory slot, and a lot of the times picking up a green or poorly rolled blue rapier will still average out to more than 10 gold per inventory slot, which is really good. But once again, this requires context for knowing what people are playing, what builds those characters are running with, and what items they're looking for to kind of flush out the stats needed or the gear needed to run those classes. That will only come in time. That kind of market understanding will be developed over time. But in the interim, don't pick up things on spec unless you're pretty sure it's going to sell. Otherwise, you're really double wasting your time, because that item that may sell to a rogue for 100 gold is going to sell to a vendor for like 12. And then so you're way upside down in terms of the efficiency of the inventory spots that you're thinking about. You know, only pick up things that you sure are going to sell. Don't fill your inventory with gray or white or green trash items. It's kind of the worst thing you can do. It's a waste of your inventory space. It's a waste of your time. Stay away from it. Let's talk about some loot traps. These are some flaws that I see in a lot of people's thinking, both, you know, myself and the community at large. The first of which is the kind of, it's an item I use a lot bias, right? So as a cleric enjoyer, as someone who plays a lot of cleric, I have probably spent 1,000 gold on gray spellbooks since playtest 3. They cost 12 gold to buy, right? But when I run into one in the dungeon, I say to myself, well, I'm going to use that gray spellbook eventually. I might as well cart it out with me and put it in the bank, and that way I can avoid buying another gray spellbook when I need one. Yeah, but no. This is flawed thinking, really. It's the you use it bias. And it can be extended to almost any kind of item that your class runs around with a lot. So, for example, if you're doing a lot of ratting on a rogue, this item for you may be a gray rapier. And you may say, I'm going to pick up every gray rapier I see and bank it just because I know I buy a lot of these. Once again, flawed. The gray rapier sells for 18 gold, 12 gold, something like that. It takes up 3 slots, right? So you're basically assigning it a value of something like 6.5 gold per inventory slot, which the math is really upside down in comparison to almost any other opportunity.
I'll leave this guy for you.
Right?
Sorry.
There's also kind of a color and large item bias, right? Like, so
Oh my God, the other
you see a
gear, dude, look
Bardiche.
at his gear.
Okay, and it's 2 wide and it's 6
Purple
long.
legs.
It is a really big item, but it's purple, right? So you say, well, it's purple, it's got to be worth more, and it's a big item, therefore it should be worth more. No, not really.
Didn't we put another
The
one around
the
there?
vendors will give you a little bit more money for big items, but it does not in any way, shape, or form make up for the lost opportunity you take by picking up that item. With those two biases out of the way, let's talk about the last one, and I think this one may be a little controversial, which is I think a loot trap is picking up meds, potions, and consumes. Okay? Most people, when they loot an enemy body, the first thing they go for is meds. They see potions, healing pots, shield pots, bandages, and they go, "Ooh, I'm always buying those. I'm going to pick up some more." It's a very bad inventory investment, right? Unless you're actually in need of those items for the run that you're on right now, those are extremely slot and gold inefficient items to pick up. Like, if you're out of meds, fantastic, you need those, right? Pick them up. I'm not telling you to ignore those. But if you're hoarding them for the next game, that is a tremendous waste of space. Healing, meds, bandages, all that stuff is relatively cheap, and they don't sell for anything. So you're not saving those for a rainy day. You're just limiting your opportunity to get more loot out on this run, which you really should never do. Just throwing that out there, I think we put too much value on consumes that we find on enemy players, and we should stop picking those up as much. The Surge Kit may be, the exception to that rule because they tend to hold their value pretty well in the player-driven economy. But leave those alone.
I need more Franny axes is what I need.
Okay, so what you see a lot of really experienced players do is after they get a kill, they do a once-over on all the gear to see if there's anything great, but you'll often see them, regardless of how good or bad it is, you'll see them pick up enemy jewelry. I'm talking about rings and amulets, and the reason why they're doing this is because even if they're green, a badly rolled green amulet or ring can still sell for 50 gold. So you're looking at a 50 gold per slot efficiency. Jewelry is a no-brainer. Tip number 3, always pick up jewelry of all kinds and take them with you. And then here is my next thing to avoid, which is cloak bias. A poorly rolled cloak may sell for 100 gold, it may sell for 150 gold, but it takes 6 inventory slots. A lot of players, divide the world between those who do have cloaks and those who don't have cloaks. It's an uncommon item to begin with just based on rarity. So a lot of the times you'll kill somebody with a cloak, your first instinct is to grab the cloak. If you're not wearing a cloak, by all means grab it. Put it on your back, wear it around, it doesn't matter. You're getting it out of the dungeon. It's more value than you came in with. Rock and roll. But if you're down to making decisions about what loot to stay and what loot to go from your bags, the cloak is a pretty bad investment most of the time. If it's really well rolled, it could be worth a fortune. But that's true of almost any gear. You need to use the same kind of dry math to evaluate a cloak as you would any other item. Once again, tip number 3, grab rings, grab amulets, grab money sacks, and then avoid overvaluing cloaks because of their scarcity.
You're running kindness, right?
And guys, this is kind of bringing to an end like what I wanted to talk about today with regard to looting. I think it's probably legit the hardest part about this game. You almost always are looting after the adrenaline spike of a big fight. You're making extremely consequential decisions in that moment that will impact the amount of value you extract with in this extraction looter that we're playing. I think it's probably the most underdeveloped skill of a majority of the player base. So hopefully I've laid out a framework here for you guys to make better decisions. If you've enjoyed this content today, please like and subscribe. It helps me a ton. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please put them in the comments section below. And Tom, if you'll play us out, good luck to you in your raids to come.
His body's just lying there, right? Right? Yes. Don't.
Move that body now, move that body. Look that motherfucker, play my flute when I loot that